Everybody can have that moment of going into a dark, bad place. I imagined myself doing things like Ted did, just to try to understand what he was like in that personality to want to kill people.
There's a predisposition to have this hatred or anger, whatever it is, and then feed that sickness to gratify these kinds of desires.
I looked at myself in that mirror, and I physically started to get sick, queasy in my stomach. I knew I could never do such a thing. I guess some people are wired for it and some aren't.
They know that they improve people, but they can't stop themselves. Doesn't matter what, doesn't mean you can control all of the deep compulsion that causes their kill.
And he caused permanent anguish. It's like, this gotta stop.
This is a tape-recorded interview between Bob Keppel and Ted Bundy.
We have almost 24 young women dead, the victims of the Green River Killer.
The whole premise was using one killer to catch another killer. It had never been done before, and that became the Silence of the Lambs.
Do you think there's something that we can do to draw him out of the woodwork? Yes, I have an idea or two that might help you catch him. There are an infinite number of ways to explain how a man can come to the point where he destroys human life.
The girl's head was severed and taken up the road.
Less than 6 hours from now, accused mass murderer Ted Bundy is scheduled to be executed in a Florida prison.
I'm the only one in possession of this information. That's just the way it is. It's now or never.
How does a detective talk to somebody without judging?
That's hard. That's very hard. I mean, it would take an extraordinary individual.
Here we were, lead investigator Dave Reichert and I, listening to Ted Bundy's theories about the Green River Killer. He hoped that by helping us, he could avoid his date with the electric chair. But I was here for a different reason. Getting him to confess to the murders of 8 young women in Washington State 10 years ago. To get there, I had to play a game. When I asked, how should I talk to the Riverman? I meant, how should I talk to Ted Bundy?
I mean, how do you detach yourself and say, this guy did these things which I consider to be horrible and repulsive, and just to really try to get in the guy's head? My advantage is that I don't have those boundaries. You think this might be the type of person who would have to tell someone to say he's married or say he's got a friend who talked about him to somebody? While he's doing all this, he can't be conducting normal relationships with people. His whole life is upset. I don't think he has comfort in God. Oh yeah, I certainly would.
Ted was the firstborn from my mom to a different man. And so my mom met my father. My father and mom got married and had 4 more children. Ted was 15 years older than me. I loved him and I liked him. And of course, I looked up to him. If I was at a friend's house after school and I happened to call home to check in with mom or dad, and they'd say, oh, your brother's here. I would just suddenly go, oh, I gotta go home. Ted's, oh. I was so excited. We were very close. He was kind of like a second dad in a way. I remember him saying, I sense music coming out of you. He's trying to encourage me, right? We went camping several times, and we went to a couple rodeos together and football games. He never showed any signs of the negatives, the bad side of him. He made it a point to make sure I didn't ever get any hint of that from him.
I knew lying was a major factor in Bundy's relationships. He lied to everyone. His girlfriends, family, parents, friends, cellmates, and lawyers.
Have you ever physically harmed anyone?
Ever physically harmed anyone? No. No.
He knew what he was doing. He should have turned himself in. Because I don't give a damn who the hell you are. You know, I don't give a they were blood related. You know, these are women who didn't deserve that. And there are people left alive, and they have to live their whole lives with this horrible pain that that piece of who I don't have any respect for anymore did, you know? I need to take a break.
Turn off the camera.
One of the things that has always concerned me about the Bundy story is most of the stories appeared to glorify Ted Bundy, and that's why I haven't done any interviews. It turns my stomach. The victims' families have been ignored for 50 years. Nobody's gotten to see what their story felt like. It tore my guts up just thinking, what would it be like to lose a child to a monster like Bundy? I couldn't imagine that. It's sad that nobody has taken the effort to tell that side of the story, what those families went through.
Sue Rancourt was my daughter. Sue was a dream child. She had just turned 17. All she wanted from the time she was tiny was to go to school. The last time I saw Susan, she was boarding the airplane in Anchorage to attend college in Ellensburg at Central Washington. You know, mothers have a certain second sense when it comes to their children. She turned around and she looked at me and her face was wet with tears. And of course I was sobbing. And she just gave a little wave. And I told my husband, I'll never see her again.
The day that she disappeared, Susan Rancourt was on her way to a meeting about becoming a dorm counselor, and she was never, ever seen again. 2 or 3 days earlier, 2 different women reported that a man had approached them with his arm in a sling and some books in his other arm, asking for help to his car.
Susan Rancourt was one of the first co-eds who went missing from universities that were over 200 miles apart. At the time, no one made any connection beyond observing that they were all missing.
Young college girls, they go off with their boyfriend. They're somewhere else, which is why the police take a measured view of these things to determine if there is some other explanation or why someone is missing.
All of us knew that something terrible had happened to her. At one point, somebody on the police department looked at my husband and said, "Aren't you going to feel silly when she shows up married to somebody?"
From January to July of 1974, 8 women went missing from across the Pacific Northwest. No one suspected the last person they ever saw was the man I was sitting with now. He was a nightmare. A stalker who was able to strike with impunity. just like our elusive riverman, the Green River Killer.
The bones of victim number 21 of Washington State's Green River Killer were dug up near Seattle today.
I'm not surprised you'll probably find more out there.
How familiar is it with those dump sites? You think they're accidental fires?
Oh, no. Clearly, it's places he searched out and looked over daytime and nighttime. The places he's been back to many times.
We suspected that Ted was also talking about himself, hinting that if we were smart enough to follow him down the trail he was blazing, we'd learn more about his methods.
Between September of '82 and May of '83, he didn't find anybody. So he was effective. And he got how many between that period? He got almost 70. And this guy started to get bold again.
He could probably do one a day if he wanted to. There are some times when he does do one a day.
A middle-aged man found a human skeleton this afternoon. Officers admit the first thought through their heads was the Green River case.
He's certainly the largest mass murderer this state has ever known.
You're looking at somebody who is less than 1% of all psychopathic killers, and they are very clever. The Green River Killer. Does he really feel the need to be out there?
Oh, yes. It's an extremely intense kind of need that just doesn't go away.
One of the reasons that piqued my interest was to look at all the dump sites of the Green River. Obviously, we might have some special knowledge that you think may assist us in that area.
Bob wanted to get into Ted's head about the thinking that went into, where am I going to leave these women? How do you know that nobody's going to run into you as you're doing your crimes? Those questions didn't really have to do so much with the Green River Killer as it did with how Ted did his own event.
He's trying to dispose of the bodies, and they won't be found. This guy doesn't want to get caught. Neither does he want to have his bodies back. I think it's clear that over time he's trying to improve the dump sites, get better at disposing of his body. Now, you can all say, well, he's really clumsy. I would have done it this way.
We were getting somewhere. I could see that Ted was projecting himself into each Green River murder as if he were the killer, making decisions on the spot, whom to lure, how to lure, where to drive. Ted knew the importance of these things to the riverman, as a killer who meticulously practiced each one of those things himself.
If the addition of individuals, the information that they might be able to get that can help with the return of our daughter, we would do anything to facilitate that. She's a beautiful, wonderful girl.
In the summer of 1974, Detective Roger Dunn and I were still trying to keep up with leads in the Janice Ott and Denise Naslund cases. They disappeared from Lake Sammamish in July.
Each lead has to be followed. Every phone call has to be made. Most lead nowhere, some with a speck of information that may someday help clear up the mystery of the whereabouts of Janice Ott and Denise Naslund.
All we knew is that the stranger known as Ted had likely taken 2 victims from Lake Sammamish that summer, and that Ted drove a VW Bug.
It was pretty evident that there was some foul play involved, even though the victims had not been located. Bob Keppel and Roger Dunn, who were detectives in homicide, needed additional investigators. And they asked if I would join them on the task force.
So it was Keppel, Dunn, and McChesney. It wasn't a big task force, it was just the 3 of them.
But we were befuddled. There was nothing to follow up on until one day we turned on the radio to listen to the news, and the news was broadcasting that the sheriff's office was investigating found remains east of Issaquah, close to where the 2 girls disappeared at Lake Sammamish State Park.
166, this is 110. Go ahead. The only thing we have is bone fragments.
Issaquah was the first break that we had. There were some bones scattered around there and hair strands from where the corpses laid for a while. The bones had been scattered by animals and contaminated by the chew marks, so not only were there no signs of homicide on the skulls, there were no signs of lethal force on any of the long stem bones either.
We discovered a graveyard, a killer's lair.
Anyone who is really trying to understand the perspective of a killer needs to go to the places that killer went and try to imagine it from their point of view. What were they thinking when they were here? How were they calculating this to be a good dump site? What would have been like for them to bring girls here?
Even though the crime scene was only 1 mile from a populated area, it was still secluded. It was the perfect terrain. If you parked a car just off the dirt road, you could see or hear anyone coming from any direction. I got the feeling this was no accident. The killer chose this site so he could cover his tracks before anyone arrived.
Dental records quickly identified Janice Ott and Denise Naslund.
She brought me so much happiness and so much love.
Denise Naslund's mother became sort of the voice of all these women. She was the designated mourner. I went to her house and she had erected a kind of altar to Denise's memory. I don't think she ever stopped crying. She was just this wail of misery.
It really affected her. Eleanor would call me almost every week to find out if there'd been any new developments.
They said that they had found a skull.
At Issaquah, there was a third victim they couldn't identify.
We had no idea who that third set of bones belonged to, but the logical probability was that it was one of the women who had disappeared earlier in that year. Our suspect was responsible for all of the women that disappeared earlier that year as well.
One of those women was Georgianne Hawkins, a University of Washington student. Near midnight on June 11th, 1974, she was returning to her dorm when a man on crutches asked if she would help him to his car.
He was becoming more daring and more audacious. So you have the Georgianne Hawkins abduction occurring almost in plain sight. The thrill, the need to up the ante.
It was a brazen move to kidnap Georgianne Hawkins out of an alley behind her sorority.
We were confident that Georgianne Hawkins had been taken by our mysterious Ted. But we couldn't be sure that she was the third victim we found at Issaquah. And then, just 6 months later, another dump site and more bones.
Seattle police are proceeding on the assumption that there are more bodies out here.
We keep finding more and more every day.
On Taylor Mountain, that's when the story really exploded.
Skeletal remains were found on Taylor Mountain, near Issaquah.
It was only 11 miles east of the Issaquah site. Forestry students found bones while marking trees for a class project.
You could find anything a couple hours from now or 5 minutes from now. It doesn't matter.
Bob was stumbling through a thick patch and tripped over a vine maple root. And when he fell down, he looked up and he was looking at a skull. That wasn't the only skull that was found at Taylor Mountain. Several were.
The problem that we have is we don't know the way they were killed. All we found is bones.
When the discovery was made at Taylor Mountain, we knew we had a lot more victims to account for and a lot more evidence to gather, a lot more witness statements to pull together all these skulls brought together the fact that this one guy was responsible for all of these murders. We had a massive serial killer case on our hands.
We have identified today that one of the skulls was that of Brenda Carol Ball, who was 22 years when she was missing from the Flame Tavern about 2 a.m. on June 1st, 1974.
Nobody saw anybody with her in the parking lot. She just vanished into thin air. There was no leads to follow.
The remains of the 3 other women were also identified from the skeletal remains we had recovered. Linda Healy, who was reported missing from her basement bedroom at the University of Washington. Kathy Parks, last seen at Oregon State University. And Susan Rancourt, who disappeared from Central Washington State College.
We were relieved to at least know something. We knew she wasn't coming back, but to just have her out there disappearing into nowhere and not knowing was harder to bear than realizing the fact that she was gone.
It was something that none of us had ever been around before in our lives. I mean, you got 7 bodies out there just a few miles apart.
One of those bodies was still unidentified, and we hadn't yet accounted for 2 of our missing girls, Georgianne Hawkins and Donna Manson. I had agreed only to ask Ted about the Green River murders, not his own. But I couldn't resist bringing up Taylor Mountain. Yet Ted showed no sign he'd ever been there.
Here's Taylor Mountain, and right about here, there's a road that cuts in. Dirt road right across.
Where's Interstate 90?
Interstate 90 from through.
It runs east, and that's about, what, 2-3 miles in?
Bundy was always in control of what he wanted to say and what he didn't want to reveal. And he chose not to say certain things because he knew that it would drive a lot of people crazy if they couldn't connect the dots. And that felt very empowering for someone like him.
Looking for another opening to talk to Bundy about his crimes, I asked him how much he knew about our investigation 10 years earlier.
So were you aware of the computer listing there that we did? Was there where girls be?
I've read something about it. Something about 2,500 suspects.
We went through all 3,500 of these suspects. We went and got 41,000 registered Volkswagen owners in the state of Washington, okay? Then we got a little bit more creative with our list.
All of the leads and the tips that were coming in overwhelmed the normal system that we had for follow-ups on a case.
We knew that we had to compare the data. We did not have investigative computers at that point. So we had to borrow computer time from the county payroll folks.
And from there, we narrowed it down to 100 of the best Ted suspects. And Bob and I were real keen on this guy Bundy.
In our conversations, Ted was constantly asking for more details about our Green River investigation, especially how the riverman hunted, lured, and abducted his victims. These, Ted told us, were clues to the killer's frame of mind and motives for killing the women he did.
Yeah, I know that's approaching it from a point of view that says, well, we want to know what's going through this guy's head because that'll help us understand him better. That's true. Profiles are only valuable to the extent that they give you, the investigator, concrete ways of going into the field and developing evidence along those lines. I think if the experts can give you some kind of background, it helps you focus your investigation. That's one thing.
One of the things that I've thought about when you mention profile, I'd like to go over the profile. I think that we did cake.
We had psychiatrists and psychologists helping with the profile in the TED investigation.
Profiling in an atypical homicide where there are no clues and no motives is like finding a needle in a haystack. First of all, you have to find the haystack. Then you have to find the needle.
In the TED investigation, the needle we were looking for was evidence, and the haystacks were the dump sites where he left his victims.
Could a man carry a dead body in as far as you found these skulls?
It would be a real job to do it.
I thought he was an extreme variant of a sexual psychopath. This is not a man who rapes the woman, then kills her, which is not uncommon. There was something different about this. He might be primarily interested in dismembering the body, particularly decapitating.
And so then you're getting a picture of somebody who has particular places where they're putting human remains. They may be cutting them up, they may be burying them, they may be carrying parts away and then bringing them back or moving them from site to site. They begin to get a much more complicated picture.
We were talking about someone who had planned the abductions. They had planned out what they were going to do with the victims.
As we talked about the Green River Killer, Bundy kept bringing the conversation back to the dump sites, veering into a disturbing realm that seemed deeply personal.
I think he's coming back to bring more than bodies back. He's coming back to check out the condition of the body. He may be going back to get whatever cake he gets out of, you know. Obviously, what he's doing is not normal, so he cannot apply normal standards to it.
I knew Bundy had returned to the same sites, Issaquah and Taylor Mountain, over and over. The Green River Killer also used the same sites over and over. They had something in common.
That would lead me to believe that he's looking for good places. And once he's found one, he would keep going back to it to view his victims' bodies.
Bundy considered his body dump sites to be sacred, like a church for him. Once he had taken a victim and murdered her, he possessed her. She belonged to him. He assumed the Green River Killer was doing something similar.
In some cases, we found maybe just a skull. We haven't found the whole skeletal name. If he wants to find out if we actually found where he placed the body.
Yeah. I would tend to say no, because there are lots of other sites where there are remains which haven't been found. If he wants to get his rocks off, he'll go to those sites. Some people might read it entirely differently than I'm just giving what I hear.
Sure you understand the district.
Recently, I thought about wherever we went camping, if Ted and I ever went to these places that he committed his crimes, and very possible. I'm sure that it's always in the front of his mind. And he's probably thought about it 24/7.
You think that he's going to be able to control himself indefinitely? He's never going to lose control, make a mistake somewhere.
Sure, he made mistakes. And he has made mistakes. There's no question in my mind, but you are eyewitnesses all over here. I mean, he is not a phantom.
That day, I was just thinking, well, I'm just gonna hitchhike and I'm gonna get home and everything's gonna be fine. Little did I know it was gonna be my worst nightmare.
I looked inside and saw him, and I still remember his face.
My name is Rebecca Garday. I am the only survivor of the Green River Killer.
One skeleton was found here on Saturday.
2 more on Sunday, and at about 10:30 this morning, it happened again.
They need somebody in the general public to come forward with that one clue, that one break.
They were asking for the public's help. I had finally got the courage to talk to the police about what happened to me.
Rebecca, the reason that we are here today is in regard to an assault that you reported to the King County Police in 1984. The assault took place in November of 1982. Is that accurate?
Yes. I just got off work. I thought I could get home faster by hitchhiking, so I stuck my thumb out and immediately got a ride. He pulled out and he looked at me really strange.
I remember those eyes, those beady little eyes.
And so I got in the car.
I was making an exchange for a sex act, and he gave me the $20. I thought this was gonna be something simple and quick, and he would give me a ride home afterwards, and everything would be forgotten.
He drove way in the back, in the woods. I didn't usually go that far.
Everything was going fine until he started strangling me. I tried my hardest to breathe. He had covered my mouth and was strangling my neck.
His face looked white, clammy, cold. Everything was cold.
When you engaged in the act, did he have an erection?
No, kind of made me think that he probably would have tried to have intercourse if I was dead.
I was able to fight him, and that threw him off. I ran down the hill as fast as I could and kept running. I didn't tell anybody for a long time, and finally I got the courage to call the task force. I gave them all the information that I had. I had picked out his photo.
Is that the man that assaulted you in 1980?
That is the man.
There's no doubt in your mind about that?
No doubts.
Would you be willing to assist in the prosecution of this individual for the assault on you?
Yes, I will, because there could be another person that he does this to.
It seemed to me like they weren't working on this case. I was considered to be a prostitute, and that's mainly why it wasn't pursued.
There was a lot of anger that perhaps because of our victims, the majority have had ties to prostitution, that we didn't care as much. Having spoken with so many of the detectives on the task force, that was never the case.
One time I went to the council to ask for more money for the investigation. I had one councilman says, well, they're just a bunch of hookers, aren't they? That was his attitude. And I said, well, you know, they're also human beings too, so. And that really made me mad.
The task force was under constant pressure, but despite our best efforts, the body count kept rising.
3 other women have been added to the Green River missing list. Police say the victims are similar, runaways, very young, disturbed.
The main reason he's been so successful, apart from his own canniness and wariness, is in fact the kind of victim he's dealing with. You're dealing with a class of victims who are hard to investigate, who disappear without being reported, whose movements are hard to trace, whose friends are difficult to run down.
Last time I saw Tammy, I was like 9. I never thought the day that when she left, that I wouldn't see her again.
In June 1983, 16-year-old runaway Tammy Lyles went missing.
She was young, you know, she just wanted to do what she wanted to do, you know, and
Our parents, we went to church on Sundays, and we had curfews, and I think she was just at that age, she wanted to hang out with friends instead.
Were your parents okay with that?
No, but they couldn't keep her at the house either. You know, it's not just our family. Other family members are going through the same thing we are.
There were a lot of people that didn't understand that when you pick up the paper and you look at that picture, that there's a story beneath that photograph. So many people didn't know what that story was. The last time I saw Debbie, she had run away again. The street corner that he picked her up was maybe 2 minutes away from where I was that day. I was the last one to see her. Debbie was just like any normal kid, doing homework and playing with friends, and she absolutely loved horses. But when you're in an abusive situation, you see that animals can be used to control. Meaning, I'll get you the horse, we'll do this, and then her biological father did whatever it was he was doing.
Are you talking about sexual?
Yes. Sorry, it's hard now even to talk about. They don't call raping children soul murder for nothing. In 1982, I got notification that Debbie had been put on the Green River missing list at that point. It is quite different if you have a loved one that passed away and are able to give them a decent burial. You are able to mourn them. You are able to have some resolution and finality in your life. That is different than somebody that you love missing.
Facing charges they have not done enough to find the killer, and under attack by angry and frightened residents, police say they have their own frustration.
As horrifying as it was for the public, it weighed even more heavily on us, the investigators trying to put an end to the murder spree. But no matter what we did, the Green River Killer was always one step ahead of us.
Another victim has added to the list of young women murdered by the Green River Killer. That list now has 28 names on it.
I looked at it, and we figured it was a hip bone off of a person.
When we first started investigating the case in August of '82, there was 7 or 8 people working on the case, and it ballooned to 43 people on task force. This had them scared, getting out of town. We've already considered that another challenge.
I don't think it'd be enough to get him out of town. It's entirely possible he's getting an ego charge out of meeting people, staying ahead of you.
Police were combing this wooded area after a motorcyclist found the badly decomposed nude body of a woman Saturday night.
From 1982 to 1984, the Green River Killer was a busy man, preying on prostitutes in the Seattle area. We suspected him in the deaths and disappearances of more than 40 young women.
There were so many women who we both knew were dead and or were missing. And for it not to be solved was really kind of a blemish on our local law enforcement and on the community, because you just have years and years of unanswered questions.
Whoever they marching against murdered my daughter. And I'm very bitter. I think if it had been a policeman's daughter, they would have had that guy a long time ago.
In the task force headquarters, someone is almost constantly on the phone following up on a lead.
I know that this took an emotional toll on these detectives as human beings. Knowing this killer is killing children and young women, and we just don't seem to be able to catch him.
It was horrible. My role was the major in charge of the whole investigation. I was on it from 1982 to the end of 1984. I ended up in the hospital. It was stress that caused it. That kind of a case, I don't know, it just To this day, it lingers in the back of my mind about some of the stuff that went on.
Officers have sent more than 800 pieces of evidence to the state crime lab and have taken calls from the public on more than 1,000 suspects.
We didn't have databases, we didn't have the internet. You literally have to track down on a piece of paper every single tip and then try to run it down. It's incredibly labor intensive.
We had people calling with tips about the Green River. It was so overwhelming, we had to shut the phones down.
We were desperate to solve the Green River cases, just like our Ted investigation of those 8 missing women in Washington 10 years earlier. Bundy was no psychic, but he did identify a weakness he saw in the Riverman.
Anything you could do to make him more disordered, to make him less capable of covering his tracks, to make him more nervous, because a nervous man's going to make mistakes.
Do you have any suggestions on how to make him more nervous?
Well, publicity makes him nervous. It makes him inactive, or it may change him. He wants things to quiet down, because this guy understands the difficulty of trying to do what he's doing when the public is aroused. You're not like this. I never thought I could name a newspaper. If I could wave a wand, I'd name the vendor that appeared in the newspaper.
Serial killers, they read the papers, they watch the news, they're interested in staying a couple steps ahead of law enforcement. The Green River Killer case had a great deal of attention.
It was huge. It got a lot of publicity, but it also brought a flood of information. So it's both a blessing and a curse.
Every time somebody does a news story about the Green River murders, the number of calls jumps back up.
One of those calls was a promising tip. Finally, we had what looked like a real suspect.
Did you kill all those women or what?
Undercover officers have been keeping a 24-hour watch on one of the suspects. Police consider him a prime suspect because he failed a polygraph test.
In my opinion, the guy who's killing his women, it's like a hobby to him, maybe an obsession. It may be a fetish, it may be necrophilia.
Would you describe the telephone call that you received from Ted Bundy?
He told me that he was sick and that he was consumed by something that he didn't understand. He just couldn't contain it.
Looked like he was gonna throw up, like he was looking at something really troubling and disgusting. He felt it coming on. He wanted to go rape and murder somebody.
You've been watching Dead Curious, where every story hides a darker truth. Don't look away now. Hit like and subscribe and step deeper into the unknown.